Old houses creep you out.
Ever heard of that story about the old house up on Route 40?
I didn't think much of anything strange happened in Porterville.
You just might be the most normal person in this town.
That's funny.
What did he do to deserve that?
He's a bad man. I have to kill him.
I want to report a murder. I want to report a bunch of murders. I'm not afraid of you. I don't believe you're gonna kill me. I don't believe you're gonna cut me with that saw.
You must have really been whacking the heck out of something.
I know what you must think, but you got it all wrong.
Hello and good evening. It is your Ohio. With our fourth episode this week, we are going to deep dive some 2004 indie horror goodness. We are going to be deep diving Chainsaw Sally. First time I saw this movie was, I want to say like 2005 or 2006. I know it was after the movie came out. The first horror movie convention I ever went to was one that used to be in Baltimore in Hunt Valley, Maryland. I think Monster Mania takes place there now, but the convention used to be called Horror Find Weekend. And again, this is like 2005, 2006, maybe. I think 2006 is what I'm leading more towards. Um, I went to about three of these conventions. Maybe four, because I went. Yeah, I think four actually, because I went to one in Hunt Valley, Maryland, which is again it's a suburb of Baltimore, Maryland. Went to the next year. They actually got kicked out of Hunt Valley because the hotel didn't like them being there, didn't like them holding the conference there or the convention there. So they essentially wouldn't renew them, let them come back the next year. So they moved it a little further south to College Park, Maryland, on the campus of the University of Maryland, right outside of DC. It was like a 15-minute drive north of DC. Um, I didn't bother me none because I love Washington DC. I grew up going there on the weekends and hanging out and stuff like that when I was younger. Um, and then so they had it there for two conventions, and then the final horror find that I went to was actually in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. They moved it north to Gettysburg. Um, at a like a hotel convention center, uh, just a bit north. Their costume contest, you used to not be able to get into the costume contest. That's how great this convention was, and how great the cosplaying and that was. But I dig I digress. Let's go ahead and get started. We're gonna start with some haunt and horror news for May 3rd. Now I know a lot of you guys probably know a lot. I've already may already know a lot of these news and that, but I get to talk to you once a week, so we get my reactions once a week. And again, take them for what they are. They're just my opinions and my reactions. But the good news is this week we actually have some haunt news. We have some haunted house news. Um, First of all, a real easy one. For those of you who live in the Cincinnati area, Dent Schoolhouse has announced that on their Facebook page that they are hiring. They are currently hiring actors, makeup, concessions, security, and parking attendants. To apply, you just go to their Facebook page to apply. The likelihood is, like with most haunted houses, is once they get their applications in and that, you'll get a phone call. If you want to be an actor, you'll probably come into audition. Um, Usually that's just a what's the word I'm looking for? It's really just a I can't even think of the word, but you pretty much, if they call you, you probably got the job, but you just have they have to audition you, make sure you can handle it, and make sure that to put you where you belong, because sometimes they'll put somebody in the wrong area and they'll have to move around. They don't want to do that. You just want to be there, go in the right spots and that. So yeah, go to the Dent Schoolhouse in Cincinnati. Their Facebook page is uh, on there. It's actually the Dent Schoolhouse, and apply if you're in the Cincinnati area and you're interested in working for a haunted house. Our second piece of news comes from California. Uh, so from 2009 to 2019, the Queen Mary was home to a haunt called Dark Harbor. It was a Halloween haunt that utilized the ship not only as a unique location, but as a background for the haunt's lore. After shutting their doors in 2019, a lot of, or yeah, in 2019, the a lot of haunts did that, but they actually Dark Harbor closed, and then they started doing Shacktoberfest, which is a haunt owned, or I guess at least named after after Shaquille O'Neal, basketball star and Halloween lover Shaquille O'Neal. Most of the time when something like that happens, he really they just pay him to use his name and stuff like that, especially in California, with him being a former Laker and a celebrity pretty much. That's what a lot of haunts in California will do. Um, so yeah, uh, so they became Shacktoberfest in 2019. So in 2024, this fall, marks the return of the local Long Beach staple Dark Harbor and all the creepy characters that sailed off into the fog. And it keeps saying 2009 in the article, but if it ran from 2009 to 2019. So I'm assuming that the mark is wrong. It's got to be 2019, right? Um, so 13th Floor Entertainment Group is partnering with the Queen Mary for Dark Harbor's resurrection. The Queen Mary's Dark, and it's going to be called the Queen Mary's Dark Harbor: The Spirits Rise. Time magazine dubbed the Queen Mary one of the top 10 most haunted places in America, and over the years it's become synonymous with ghost sightings, scares, and paranormal activity in Southern California. A unique aspect of the Queen Mary hosting a haunt is the opportunity to navigate through her nearly 90-year-old corridor. So basically, you're on the Queen Mary. You're on a haunted ship going through this haunted house. Ghostly figures weaving through the narrow passages aboard the ship. That can mean passing through the underbelly in the engine room, sneaking a peek at the propeller, or finding yourself in the midst. I just went too far. In the midst of a reportedly haunted swimming pool, all while under constant attack from Dark Harbor's ghouls and goblins. This article, I did not credit where I got the article from. That the hell is wrong with me this week? So we spoke to 13th Entertainment's Group's regional manager, Amy Holloman, about what we can expect when haunt season rolls around in September. Holloman assured us there would be mazes on the ship when Dark Harbor returns. Well, yeah, if you're going to do a haunt, you got to have a maze. And how many can we expect? Apparently, that's still under wraps for now. So there could be more. There will be more than one haunt on this boat and in this ship. This is gonna be. I wish this is one of the reasons I wish I lived in. I don't really want to live in California, but this would be great if they could do this like in other places. We have one here. In Ohio, we down in Cincinnati as well. We have the USS Nightmare. It is actually a riverboat a haunt on an old riverboat. That's parked right on the Ohio River down in Cincinnati, and it's rumored to be great. I haven't had a chance to go to it yet. As for the return of Dark Harbor lore, the city and the Queen Mary really want the Halloween event to center around stories from their ship. So they're going to center the haunt itself around stories like the lore and the stories that come from the show, like the ghost stories and that. They're definitely bringing back some fan favorites. But we're going to introduce some new characters. Dark Harbor has been pretty famous for being tied to the story of a signature character, so we're going to continue the tradition. It says we may not know how many mazes will be coming to the Queen Mary this year, but we there will be a mix of old and new. There are going to be some mazes that are brought back from the past, but there is also going to be new characters that lead to new mazes and new experience. This is going to be great. I mean, it just already sounds like it's already got me sold, and I don't live in California. Since 2019, the industry has evolved in so many ways. So we are hoping to bring both the screams from the past and some new sophisticated approaches. For folks who are a bit squeamish when it comes to things that go bump in the night, the harbor will house mazes along with themed foods and entertainment. So if you have people that don't want to go with a haunt with you, and let me tell you, as an actor in a haunt, I've been doing this for 24 years this year. Don't force someone who doesn't want to go into the haunt because all you're going to do is get in trouble and you're going to get somebody hit. Somebody who is too scared, whether it's a child, especially if it's a child, don't bring your children. If they're scared, do not bring your children into a haunt. We do not stop. I mean, that's the thing. We don't stop if they're scared. We have to keep going. We have to keep, because you why ruin everybody else's time because you didn't listen to us and not bring, and didn't bring your child and brought your child through when we told you not to bring them in. So leave kitties at home if possible. If they're great, if they do well, fine. Bring them through. That's fine. That's great. But if you're gonna bring a child through, make sure they actually want to do it. Even if it's not a child, if it's your girlfriend, boyfriend, friends, don't make people go through a haunt that don't want to go through the haunt. We kind of don't like getting hit, and that's a good formula for us to get hit. So, but basically, this haunt, if you bring somebody they don't want to go through, there's still entertainment. There's still gonna be live entertainment. There's still gonna be food. Balancing out the scares with fun. We've learned that people want Halloween events not just to be scared, but also to be really fun. Up here we have Land of Illusions in Middletown, Ohio, and Land of Illusions will have concerts. Like they've literally had War and Mushroom Head at these concerts. And they have live entertainment because there's so much to do. There's a bar at Land of Illusion. There's movies playing. Um, and there's just a lot. There's so much more to do besides the haunt, just in case somebody doesn't want to go through the haunt. Plus, and it's like this: if you got a haunt and you have the room and you have the time and the funds, make other stuff besides the haunt. Make it a whole night out. A lot of times haunts will just make it so okay, we'll show up, we'll go through the haunt, and within 45 minutes to an hour, the night's over. You know, you can go to something else. That's fine. If that's what you want to do is, go to the haunt, then go out to your favorite bar or something. But why not utilize? You got all these people at your haunt. Why not utilize them being there and make money? Have alcohol, have entertainment, have you know comedians, music, anything. Make it a whole night out. But anyway, I'm digressing from this. Aside from the haunts, from haunts event, we already went through all that. And experiences on board the ship. Okay, let's see. Aside from haunts, the event will also include live entertainment, themed bars and lounges, and experiences on board the ship, which Holloman described as activations on the ship where people can explore. Plus, tasty eats and treats, and of course, the return of well-known iconic characters. Holloman adds, we really want to honor the past and what's happened here. We don't want to change that entirely. We just want to continue adding to the story and bring in the dark and sinister tones that have been here in the past. And they can't wait. I mean, I can't wait. It sounds great. I wish I could go, but unfortunately, I will be haunting again this year, so I won't be able to attend. I'll be able to attend a few haunts, and I'll tell you guys about them. I might even do live videos from the haunts on the YouTube channel. We're gonna start doing. I think I'm gonna start trying to do a little more with the YouTube channel. Um, but yeah, it's if you're in California, the Queen Mary's Dark Harbor is located at 1126 Queens Highway in Long Beach, California. For more information, visit the Dark Harbor website. You just go to Dark Harbor on Google and you can find the website. But yeah, that's gonna be great. Our last piece of haunt news: Disneyland's Haunted Mansion refurbishment. For those who don't know, Disney announced that the grounds of the Haunted Mansion are expanding with a new immersive outdoor queue and a retail store at Disneyland. We're talking about the Disneyland, the California uh, Haunted Mansion. Basically, it's been closed for refurbishment since January, since the end of January. It seems like they're really just their big focus is going to be on the queue to make it more immersive, more interactive, and more accessible. I guess they're adding in like somebody I think I read somewhere I heard someone say something earlier about them adding maybe an escalator or an elevator to make it more handicap accessible. Um, but the grounds of the Haunted Mansion are expanding with a new immersive outdoor queue and retail store at Disneyland. This post shares closing dates and details. Okay, we've already done all that. That was back in February they posted this. The spirited metamorphosis of the Haunted Mansion is now underway at Disneyland Resort as of winter 2024. It is now spring, so it's been going on for a little bit. Um, the additions will build onto the story, the lore of the Haunted Mansion. The new grounds will immerse guests in enhanced theming, as well as a new retail shop adjacent to the attraction's exit. Um, I'm 100%. The Haunted Mansion, needless to say, the Haunted Mansion is one of my favorite rides and my favorite attractions at Disney World. I have not been to Disneyland, so take that as you will. Local legends suggest the manor known today as the Haunted Mansion was first built by a prosperous sea captain. To this day, the mansion's staff faithfully maintains the happy haunting grounds. The expanded queue will tie into these stories and more, including new gardens inspired by Master Gracie, Madame Leota, and the One-Eyed Cat. I think I read it. Hold on. So yeah, I mean, just keep an eye out. Keep an eye out. They'll probably announce something soon about what they're doing and how they're doing it. So yeah, be ready for that. It's gonna be it's probably gonna be awesome. It's Disney, so it's gonna be interactive in that. All right, let's turn to horror movie news. So, in case you haven't noticed, there's a public domain status of beloved icons like Winnie the Pooh, Cinderella, Mickey Mouse, Bambi have been wreaking havoc on the horror genre in the past couple of years. I mean, we've had the Winnie the Pooh. There's two Winnie the Pooh movies. The first one, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. I think it was the first one was terrible. I would never suggest watching it, but I mean, again, my opinion. I suggest not watching it, but I always encourage people to watch movies to to watch movies to form your own opinion. Don't just like ride 100% on my opinion. Just focus, watch a movie. Unless you trust my opinion, then that's fine. But if you really want to watch a movie, don't listen to the my opinion or other podcasters or reviewers or anything like that. Just, watch a movie. Watch the movies you want to watch. But so basically Disney's copyrights on these characters, Winnie the Pooh, Cinderella, Mickey Mouse, Bambi, they've all come up, they've all expired. Mickey Mouse, the only, to my knowledge, the only Mickey Mouse copyright that has expired is the Steamboat Willie. Um, so yeah. Uh, Basically, they've been breaking havoc on the hard genre the past couple of years with filmmakers itching to get their hands on the characters and put them into twisted situations. In the wake of the two Winnie the Pooh slashers, again, I haven't seen the second one. I've heard the second one is much better than the first one. But sorry about that. Winnie the Pooh is about to battle Mickey. That's right. It's not from the same team behind Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. But Deadline reports that Glenn Douglas Packard will direct a horror movie called Mickey versus Winnie for Untouchables Entertainment and the website iHorror. So they are making a Winnie the Pooh versus Mickey horror movie That's going to be your Disney version of Freddy versus Jason? I guess. I really don't know. Um, Deadline details the film follows two convicts in the 1920s who escape into a cursed forest, only to be dragged and consumed into the depths of the dark forest's muddy heart. Muddy heart. A century later, a group of thrill-seeking friends unknowingly venture into the same woods. Their Airbnb getaway takes a horrifying turn when the convicts mutate into twisted versions of childhood icons Mickey Mouse and Winnie the Pooh, and emerge to terrorize them. A night of violence and gore erupts as the group of friends battle against their new monstrous, beloved childhood characters and fight to break free from the forest's grip. Glenn Douglas Packard wrote the screenplay that he'll be directing. Horror fans call for the thrill of witnessing icons like the new Aliens and Avengers sharing the screen, while licensing nightmares make such crossovers rare. Well, yeah, because you can't. Disney owns the Avengers. I think Warner Brothers owns Aliens, or Universal owns Aliens. Somebody owns Aliens that isn't Disney. Can't make. That was a big problem with Jason versus Freddy and why it took them so long to make that movie or Freddy versus Jason, because neither, you know, one movie company owned Freddy, one company owned Jason, and you can't make them. They weren't going to basically agree on who wins, who loses, who gets killed, and all that good stuff. All right, so all right, we already did that. Mickey versus Winnie serves as our tribute to that thrilling fantasy, Packard said in a statement this week. Producer Anthony, Pernica from iHorror Previews, we're thrilled to unveil this unique take to horror fans. The Mickey Mouse featured in our film is unlike any iteration audiences have encountered before. Our portrayal doesn't involve characters donning basic masks. Instead, we present deeply transformed live-action horror renditions of these iconic figures, weaving together elements of innocence and malevolence. After experiencing the intense scenes we've crafted, you'll never look at Mickey the same way. What do you guys think? I don't know. Hold on. And we're back. Our next story. Scooby Dooby Doo, where are you? On Netflix, it seems. It appears that the world's largest streaming service is looking to get into the Mystery Incorporated business as a live action Scooby Doo series is in the works. While details are currently slim, the project hails from one of the most prolific television producers of all time, Greg Berlanti, who basically helped create and build the entire, wouldn't say entire, but he beat the Arrow universe. I believe he's like one of the architects of the Arrow universe. With Arrow, I think he helped produce the Green Arrow, Flash, and Supergirl series. Um, According to the Hollywood Reporter, Netflix is nearing a deal for a new live-action Scooby-Doo series that will be based on the classic Hanna-Barbera cartoon. Josh Applebaum and Scott Rosenberg from Cowboy Bebop, and High Fidelity are on board to write the series while Berlanti producing. This is described as a script to series deal. Basically, if Netflix likes the script, once they get it, a full season will be ordered at that time. It's a little unclear at this stage how far along Applebaum and Rosenberg are, but this seems to be in the relatively early stages. What's interesting is that the show is set to go to Netflix rather than Max, which is owned by Warner Brothers Discovery. Um, yes, Warner Brothers owns the rights to Scooby Doo. Their deal, though, they're probably going to make a shit ton more money from Netflix than they would putting it on Max. Max is kind of failing right now. Warner Brothers Discovery themselves are broke. Um, they have spent way too much money, and it even seems because this is the group that owns TNT, TBS, um, Turner Classic Movies, and that. It even seems like TNT is about to lose the NBA deal. That would be just a monumental travesty if TNT loses that NBA deal, because pretty much you're gonna lose the company without the NBA deal, because that's probably where most of their money comes through. Um, they also own like the Travel Channel, Discovery, and all that stuff. And all those channels that go with it. So I don't want to see them fail. I love Discovery. I like watching the old Ghost Adventures. Not a big fan of the new episodes, but I love watching the old ones. So yeah, yeah, Scooby Doo going to Netflix. Let's see how that works. Um, so next up, the Faces of Death. So Faces of Death has a remake. I just found this out. Um, Apparently it's coming from Legendary Entertainment and Cam filmmakers. I'm not gonna say this guy's name right. Isamasi and Daniel Goldhaber or Haber. It's been a while since we've heard a peep about this one, but I guess they just got a rating, and the upcoming Faces of Death remake is rated R for strong bloody violence, gore, sexual content, nudity, language, and drug use. I'm not gonna talk much about this just because I don't know much about it. From the looks of it, it is like because Faces of Death was one of the first viral videotapes, and we are so lucky to be able to use it as a jumping off point. So, are they remaking the old? As I know, there was a horror movie back in the 60s or 70s called Faces of Death. But are they? From the sound of it, they're trying to remake those old videos where you'd buy them from the video store. Um, you'd buy them from the video store, and it would they supposedly showed people really dying. Needless to say, they were fake. They came out as fake a long time ago, but still, there was a lure to watch them. Um, so yeah, that's gonna be interesting if whatever they say is true. I'm gonna keep an eye on it. But I can't really comment too much more. But final piece of news, again, people already probably know this. Terrifier 3 has finally set a release date. Um, and well, they set a release date before, but I think they pushed it up, is what they've done. The third part of the slasher series will grace theaters on October 11th. 2 weeks before, yeah, because I remember saying that they were going to release it on October 28th. They pushed it up 2 weeks, which, yeah, it's Halloween season. I don't get these companies that release their big horror movies for the year 3 days before Halloween. Release it at the end of middle to the end of September, beginning of October, and get the money. Like, you're gonna make a ton more money doing it like that than you ever would waiting until Halloween weekend to release a movie. Like, I don't get that, but I'm not in Hollywood, so yeah, that's it. That's all the news we have for you this week. So let's get into our movie of the week, Chainsaw Sally. Um, so Chainsaw Sally, hold on one second, guys. All right, and I'm back. Had to take a sip of drink there. Chainsaw Sally came out in 2004. Most of it went through I think most of its distribution went through the convention tours, because that's where I bought it, was all out of the conventions. The movie is written and created by Jimmy O. Burrell. I'm hoping I'm saying his last name right, or Burrill. Uh, he's doesn't have many movie credits. We'll talk about him a little more at the end. We'll talk about the characters and that. There's not much trivia for this movie, so we'll talk about these guys at the end. The movie stars April Monique Burrow, Jimmy O's wife, as Sally Diamond, or Diamond, not Diamond, but Diamond, Diamon. Basically, April stars as Chainsaw Sally. Uh, the We also have Mark Redfield as Steve Kellerman. Mark Redfield is kind of known for, looks like he's known for a lot of old or new, a lot of British stuff. Played in the Canterville Ghost, Sinbad and the Pirate Princess. Movies I haven't seen: Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Um, we have Alec Joseph as Ruby Diamond, April or Sally's brother. David R. Calhoun as Harvey Benton. Kristen Hudson as Cynthia Prescott. Aaron Martinique as Officer Zeke Petrillo, and Brad Smoley as Officer Earl Nyland. Jennifer Rouse as Ice Cream Girl, and you will know I make a big deal about this. But we have a couple of I make a big deal about Ice Cream Girl in the movie or during the podcast or during the notes. Trust me, yeah, I make a big deal about her. But we have two horror movie legends in this that make cameos in this movie. First, we have the godfather of gore himself, Herschel Gordon Lewis. He's in this movie. He plays Mr. Gordon, um, the hardware store owner, and we also have Gunnar Hansen as Daddy. Gunnar Hansen, of course, Leatherface. He is the original Leatherface from the 1970s Texas Chainsaw. The 70s or 60s? I think it's I'm pretty sure 70s. Texas Chainsaw. I'm good with trivia. I'm bad with dates. So that's your cast. Let's go ahead and get started on. Go ahead and get started with Chainsaw Sally. So the movie opens on Sally having an inner monologue. She's basically sitting in this house, this old farmhouse. It's got the whole like blue light coming through, moonlight coming through the windows, uh, through blinds and that on her body, and she's talking about how much she hates waiting. She's waiting. She's obviously waiting for a victim or something, but we get a couple of brief glances of her holding a chainsaw, and she tells us how much she doesn't like to wait. She hates it more than those Girls Gone Crazy commercials on late night TV. Sally says they should be called Girls Got Drunk and Lost Any Fraction of Dignity or Self-Respect. Kind of a long title, but I guess it would work. For those who are young, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, there used to be something called Girls Gone Wild. It was a videotape series of um a bunch of drunk girls. Most of them were hired by the company, but a lot of them weren't. Flashing the camera. They'd always go down to spring break and Mardi Gras and different party destinations, get the drunk girls flashing the cameras, and they put them on DVD, have them sign the waivers, put them on DVD and VHS, and put them out for the masses to purchase. Um, the guy who runs it, who ran Girls Gone Wild, has been arrested numerous times. Like they don't exist. I mean, they still exist out there, like what they've sold, but he doesn't do this kind of shit anymore because he kind of got in a lot of trouble between beating his wife and a bunch of other stuff like theft and that. I think also at some point they ended up being minors. Like a couple of girls gave fake IDs to get into the bar and they ended up filming like minors showing, flashing the camera and stuff like that, like 17-year-olds. And needless to say, that's a huge no-no. So I think Joe Francis was his name. He's in jail right now. Good riddance. But yeah, so she keeps her inner monologue talking about how these girls should come to the town of Portersville if they really want crazy. She said she had everything taken care of fine by herself until a few days ago. So we do the flashback. We get 5 days ago graphic, and we cut to Sally, who is also a librarian. That is her job. She works as a librarian during the day and is Chainsaw Sally at night. She's at work reading the Big Book of Serial Killers. Um, in the background, we hear a couple arguing in the library. We meet Stan and Vicky. Stan is asking Vicky how much longer she's going to be reading books and writing reports, doing research for her reports for schools. Basically, she's there with a study group, and Stan's just being there being a complete dick. He says it's all a bunch of bullshit, and he didn't have to write no reports. And look at him. Yeah, he doesn't look like he looks like your local meth head. Let's put it that way. So maybe go read those books and do those research papers, kids. Um, her friend Bonnie chimes in and says, "Yeah, look at him," and he tells her to blow him. So Stan's a winning character already. Sally then intervenes, telling Stan basically Chainsaw Sally gets up and tells Stan that he needs to be quiet as it is a library, and then Stan goes, "Fine, I'll just leave." Vicky stands up and asks him to stay and that she'll make it worth his while if he stays. Bonnie calls Vicky a doormat, and of course Stan tells her, "Well, I got your doormat right here." And I don't think I need to tell you what he does, but I'm going to anyway because this is a podcast and it is a vocal podcast, not a visual. He grabs his crotch and just goes, it does the whole I got your doormat right here. Sally again tells Stan he needs to be quiet again or she's going to have to ask him to leave. Uh he says no problem, I can be quiet, and calls her a frigid little freak as she walks away. Sally returns to her desk and sits down and Sally basically returns to her desk and sits down. And Stan tells the group, "I'm gonna go take a piss, and when I'm done, I'm leaving with or without Vicky." Stan walks over, grabs the green bathroom key, and walks away grumbling. And it's actually pretty funny because it's actually pretty funny because he's walking away going, tell me to be quiet, you frigid little like a fucking. So we cut to Stan. He's in the bathroom. And all of a sudden, Sally appears behind him and grabs him from behind and tells her, "I said be quiet in the library." We don't get to see it, but she shoves like this big round sharp thing, almost like a pencil sharpener or something, into his head. We couldn't really tell what it was, but he shoved it into his head, and Stan becomes victim number one. 3 minutes and 35 seconds into the film. We get some rockabilly music in the opening credits roll. During the credits, we can see it cuts to like a bunch of stuff and then comes back and there's Sally kind of like draining his blood with his hands and from his hands and basically cuts back, shows a bunch of other like random stuff and then come basically after the credits and Sally says dental records. She's basically looking at the camera and goes dental records and takes a ball peen hammer and just smashes what we assume is Stan's face with the hammer. Uh, so now apparently the movie has officially begun. We now cut to what appears to be a city council meeting. It's a bunch of people behind on a table. It's definitely a city council meeting. We find out that one guy is the bane of Sally's existence, and his name is Harvey Benton. The mayor says the mayor says it's time for the town to make the move into the 21st century and introduces Benton to the crowd. Benton gets up, says Porterville has tremendous growth potential, and he talks about in the last 6 months how phase one is complete. Phase one is affordable waterfront condos, and they're selling better than expected. He then says they are on the verge of acquiring the Kellerman property, which is over 200 acres of nothing that will have, and he plans to build condos, a marina, all the way up to the waterfront. Basically, the Kellerman property cuts the town in half, and if he owns that property, he'll be able to build condos from the center of town all the way to the river or to the waterfront, which this town would be technically where this town is. It's technically on the mouth, not really the mouth, but the beginning of the Chesapeake Bay and the Susquehanna River. Um, which is ideal property, especially the bay itself, because there's a lot of really good fishing in the bay. One of the council members says, "This is the part that I want to hear." And in phase three, which is Benton's Quest, it's 4 miles of waterfront properties, shopping centers, office buildings, movie theaters, restaurants, bars and nightclubs. So basically, he wants to take all this land and gentrify it. What we would call it today is gentrification. Um, so it goes back to the council. The council really doesn't like this idea. One person says he will turn Porterville into Benton's ghetto. The mayor, chimes in, tries to defend Benton, but the council's they're not listening. They're like, yeah, fuck the mayor. And then all of a sudden, an older man gets up, and it almost reminds you of God. What's his name from Jaws? I can't remember his name. I guess I'm having a brain fart right now, but um, anybody comments? Nope. I can't. The guy who owns the boat in Jaws, but he basically just starts up and says that um, he grew up in Porterville, that his pappy lived there and his pappy's pappy. These are word for word what he says. Um, he says if Benton gets his way, are they to believe that any of the money that's made from all this waterfront housing and all this development will ever make its way up Main Street, or will it go into the pockets of big corporations and Harvey Benton? He tells the city council to he says that he wakes up every morning, makes some coffee, and he looks out of his window and he can see the water. He can see the bay, the river, everything. He says if Benton gets his way, he won't get to see the water anymore. He'll wake up and he'll look out the window and see a 75-foot silver cock. Because Benton's main building of Benton's Quest looks like a giant. It almost looks like a giant silo, but it does kind of look like a penis. He tells the council if they let Benton and the mayor have their way, they will swallow them up whole and leave them in the poorhouse. Benton asks, so Benton stands up and asks them, he goes, please consider my proposal and give me another chance to talk. Give me another chance to come talk to you guys as soon as I get the opportunity to talk to Steve Kellerman. And we cut to an office because Steve comes. They don't even. Benton doesn't even finish saying Kellerman's last name. It basically goes, and let me finish talking to Steve Keller, and we immediately cut over to an office, and Steve Kellerman is there. He introduces himself to a blonde woman who we find out is Cynthia Prescott. Kellerman is definitely not dressed to do business. He's kind of dressed like a bum. Um, Cynthia says Kellerman is a hard man to get a hold of. She makes that clear. She hands him a folder that says Benton's Quest. Inside the folder has the offer that Harvey Benton has for Steve Kellerman for the Kellerman property. And she again makes sure to say that he's a hard man to get a hold of and that his attorneys haven't been very helpful. He says, well, he pays them a lot of money to handle things he doesn't want to handle, and that he owns a lot of property that he doesn't even so much property that he doesn't even know all the property that he owns, including the property that Benton wants. Cynthia tells him it was left owned by his late Uncle James. Cynthia and Steve they decide to drive up to the property so Steve can see it and decide whether he wants to sell it or not. We cut to Gordon's Hardware, where once again, where basically we talked about it a second ago, the godfather of Gore himself, Herschel Gordon Lewis, is working the counter. Sally walks in. They have a little little back and forth banter. He asks her how she's doing. She says, "I'm doing great. I'm great. And even if I wasn't, who would listen? All that kind of like cheesy stuff." Sally says he's like a father to her. She thinks. They banter a bit more, and Sally tells him all she needs is a new handle for their hammer. He says, well, I'll be. You must have been whacking the heck out of something. So then we cut over to some really shitty B-roll footage of a construction site. Like it's obvious they probably just paid for the B-roll footage. And then they cut over to this trailer that's supposed to be Benton's office. And the worst editing I've ever seen of editing a sign over another sign. That was terrible. Like just really, really, really bad. So Benton and the mayor are in the office. The mayor asks if Benton thinks Kellerman is going to sell. And Benton asks, Why, is there any good reason why he wouldn't? Benton says that, that there isn't a straight man alive that would say no to Cynthia Prescott. And the mayor basically the mayor says, well, yeah, I'd do it if I had it, but I'd have to get my little blue pill. Benton tells the mayor, if Cynthia couldn't get you up, then a little blue pill ain't gonna do the trick. So we cut over to Cynthia and Steve, who are now at the Kellerman property. They enter the abandoned house, and Cynthia gets a phone call. She sets up a meeting for 1 p.m. the next day. It's obviously Benton on the other side of the phone. Steve asks if there are any other buildings on the property. Cynthia says there's a few barns, but it's getting late, and that the house creeps are out. He basically says, "What old houses creep you out?" And she goes, "No, this one in particular." We get a flashback where Cynthia tells a story of how an entire family was murdered right before Christmas 15 years ago in that house. Legend has it that there were 3 escaped convicts or lunatics. I'm sorry, lunatics from the psychiatric hospital inside of town. They say the men forced their way into the house and shot the man who lived there point blank. And after killing the man, they chased down and raped and killed his wife. Some people say the lunatics ate them because the only things they found were body parts and semen. Gross. Kellerman asked if there were any kids. Kellerman's like, well, hey, you said it was a whole family. What happened were there any kids or something? Cynthia says she doesn't know. Steve doesn't seem too happy about owning the house now. He's like, oh, really? I own this house? I get that fucking sucks. Steve and Cynthia leave the house, and we see someone watching from the trees. It's Sally's brother, Ruby. We now cut to a blonde woman running through the woods, and Sally's chasing after her. Sally, of course, is no longer dressed in her librarian outfit, and she's chasing her with a chainsaw. Now, Sally has the engine running of the chainsaw, which is clearly a waste of gas. I mean, you should never run a chainsaw unless you're going to use it, or you're in the process of using it at the moment. And it kind of gives her, when she's chasing someone, it kind of gives your position away. They're like, oh shit, that chainsaw sounds getting closer. I better run further away. Then we get the full view of Sally in her chainsaw Sally get up, and she's looking hot. I mean, chainsaw Sally looks great. She does the leatherhead dance a bit, and when I say leather dance, the whole spinning around, swinging the chainsaw, like the Leatherface dance at the end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre when that Sally gets away. So the blonde goes running after she sees Sally with doing the dance. We learn the victim's name is Tina as Sally tracks her. We learn because Sally's going, Tina, Tina. And Sally basically does the whole come out wherever you are. Well, Tina's trying to hide, and she ends up snapping a twig, and you see Sally do the look over. So Sally just starts walking over. She has the chainsaw off now, thankfully. And she starts touching different bushes, going duck, duck, duck. And she jumps out and goes, goose, and there's Tina. Sally tells her she's been looking for her. And Sally says she's been waiting and waiting, but she never came back. Tina says she has no idea what Sally's talking about, and Sally just loses it and rips Tina's shirt, and we got our first and only boob shot at 18 minutes and 30 seconds into the movie. Sally then asks, is it not true that last June you, Tina Gray, checked out a library book on Atkins? Basically, it's an act that the Atkins diet. This is 2004 when the Atkins diet was still like the big fad diet. And nobody's been able to check it out again since because Tina admits she didn't bring the book back. Sally now says, and now your fine. Sally says that now your fines are in the double digits. Sally says, Tina, you only live 4 blocks from the library. I've sent you letters, I've sent you notices, and you just ignored them. And Sally says, now there's a bunch of fat asses walking around Porterville because of your total lack of responsibility. And Sally then chainsaws Tina to death while actually some really good metal music starts playing behind her. Sally then just looks and goes, oh, great, now I got to change. So, a mental note, if I'm ever in Porterville, Maryland, don't check any library books out. And if you do, turn this shit in on time because, goddamn, they're strict. So now we cut to Steve and Cynthia in the bar, in the only bar in town. Cynthia flirts with him. She's flirting him a little bit. It's obvious that she works for Benton, and she's trying to convince him to convince Steve to sell the property. Uh, and then we hand over to another couple. It's a whole almost the same issue. Turns over. Basically, the woman accuses the guy of using her. It's almost like they had a one night stand, or they were dating and they had sex. He tells her the way she talked about the sex she would have, and I quote, had sparklers shooting out of her ass and fireworks coming out of her cooch. Pretty much calls her a whore and not a good one. Says that she was really bad at sex. She throws her drink into his face and she basically leaves. We cut back to Cynthia and Steve, and we show over to Cynthia and Steve, and they've decided they've had enough excitement for the 5 minutes they've been in the bar. And before they leave, Cynthia asks if she could come up to Steve's room and get the paper she needs before the meeting with Benton in the morning. Steve agrees, and they head out. We now go to the guy who basically the guy who just got his drink thrown in his face. He turns and he sees Sally bent over the pool table shooting pool. And he gets up to go hit on her. He asks if she wants a game, and she says, "I'm not really into games." He says, "I'm talking about pool." Well, we learn his name is Derek, and he offers to buy Sally a drink. Sally asks, "Well, what about your girlfriend?" And he said he's already wearing hers, and she isn't his girlfriend. She's a mental case. Sally asks him, "Well, how do you know I'm not a mental case?" He says he can tell. He can tell she's not a mental case. She's very down to earth. And we realize Derek is not a very good judge of character. We go to Cynthia and Steve, who they enter Steve's hotel room where the sun is still shining brightly, even though it's dark outside. Like they left the bar, it was dark. They got to the bar, it was dark, but the sun's shining through brightly because we can't match up the time of day apparently. He hands her a folder with the papers she needs. He thanks her for a very eventful evening. And she's looking confused because she's like, "Oh wait, we're not gonna have you're not gonna have sex with okay." And he sends her on her way with the packet. She says she'll get the copies made in the morning. And she's walking away shocked that he didn't basically jump her bones. We cut back to Sally and Derek. Now they're in the back of a car making out. Uh, she pulls. They go in the car. They're kissing and that. She pulls the seatbelt out and basically buckles him in. Um, it's a shoulder strap seatbelt. So she pulls it over and she buckles him in. She asks him if he's ready for the fireworks. They make out a little bit more before Sally, without Derek seeing it, pulls out a straight razor, Sweeney Todd style, and cuts his dick off. And it takes him a little bit. It takes him a couple of seconds to realize that his dick's been cut off. Could be because he's drunk. Could be any reason. Just could be bad filmmaking. We don't know. But when he does, he of course starts screaming, and all this blood starts splurting up on him. She tells him for all his bragging, he wasn't half as good as he said he was. And if he was, she may have let him live longer. Again, blood is spraying on him. It's good. It's a good effect. She keeps repeating her everything. Basically, he basically repeats everything he had just said to his girlfriend in the bar. Sally reaches in, so he's sitting there. His dick's on the floor. He's bleeding out. Sally reaches in the back of the car, grabs a box of sparklers, lights one, and puts it right where his dick used to be. So now he's got a sparkler dick. And she goes, "Well, you're lucky I don't have any fireworks." and it just shows the sparkler. And she actually looks a little turned on as the sparkler shoots out. So rest in peace, Derek. We cut back to Sally's house where we finally get to fully meet Ruby. Ruby is obviously homosexual. He's got makeup on. Wears women's clothing. He might be trans, might be just cross-dressed. We don't know. Not really that big of a point of the story. But he's wearing a full face of makeup and he's got an apron on over his overalls. Ruby asks Sally if she brought home any drinks or groceries. Ruby tells her that basically Sally says no. Ruby tells her that the blonde lady with the pointy titties was back up at the house again today. Sally says that Cynthia Prescott is Benton's calling card, and if Steve sells to Benton, then he will be knocking right on their door. Basically, Ruby and Sally obviously live on the Kellerman property. Ruby says, "Well, fuck a furry dick," which is a good line here. I like this next line. Sally basically replies, "Don't talk like that because fucking farm animals will rot your Twinkie off and make you smell funny." I giggled at that. That was pretty funny. She tells Ruby that she'll take care of it, but just keep an eye out for Cynthia. They sit down for dinner, which looks disgusting, and Sally says they should probably get the groceries off the front porch before they eat. The groceries are, of course, Derek's dead body. Ruby asks what. Ruby looks at this and goes, "Well, what'd you do with his pea pistol?" She pulls it out of her pocket and hands it to Ruby, who says, "Thanks." And we now get a short montage of them eating dinner and watching local DC horror host Count Gordeval. Count Gordeval is your typical. He is an actual legitimate Baltimore and DC horror movie host, and he's been doing it for like 40 years. He's been doing it since like the 80s, at least 70s and 80s. He actually used to be DC's version of Bozo the Clown. Back in the day when they were doing Bozo, each territory, each area had their own Bozo the Clown. The main one, the real one, of course, was in Chicago. That's where the original Bozo is from. But each city had their own, cable access. Bozo the Clown that can entertain the kids in that area. Um, he played Bozo at one point, but he is also most famous in that area as the local horror movie host, Count Gordeval. There's actually an entire documentary on his life and his career on Tubi that you can check out. But they fall asleep. Sally and Ruby fall asleep on the couch, and we get more of Sally's inner monologue a little bit, where she says she doesn't know how many late night horror movies they had watched together on the couch. She doesn't remember the last time she slept in her own bed. She says that she loves Ruby and he's the only family she has left. We cut back to the Porterville Library the next morning where Steve enters looking for the town's periodicals and old newspapers. We meet George, who is a blind man who works the desk, and he says, "Follow me." Sally is sitting at her desk just watching, and Steve's phone rings immediately. Basically, Steve starts looking at the periodicals and that. Steve's phone rings, and Sally shushes him. Steve immediately leaves, and Sally goes to see what he was looking at, and we now get a flashback of footage with "Hark the Herald Angels Sing" playing in the background. And we go back basically to the family that was killed 15 years ago, where Gunnar Hansen, Leatherface, the original Leatherface himself, is sitting with his family, the wife and kids, and sitting in a chair. His wife is sitting on the chair next to him, and then the kids are on the floor playing. There's a knock on the door. Gunnar gets up and goes and asks, "Daddy," I guess I could call him, but I'm going to call him Gunnar because he's Gunnar. Gunnar answers the door, and 2 gunshots ring out, and Gunnar goes down. The dad goes down. 3 lunatics enter the house, and they chase the wife down as she's running with the kids upstairs. The kids get away, but the lunatics chase the wife down. And then the kids watch from the top of the landing as their mother gets raped and murdered. Next thing you know, Gunnar Hansen shows back up, and he's got a fucking chainsaw. Gunnar basically, the dad murders all 3 lunatics with the chainsaw, slashing them up. cutting him to bits, and before he basically succumbs to his gunshot wounds. And now it's obvious, basically, that the kids from that murder are Sally and Ruby. Ruby hugs his dead mother, or child Ruby hugs his dead mother, and Sally asks her dad if she's all right. Gunnar says he doesn't think so. Sally says, "Well, you killed them, Daddy." Gunnar says, "Yeah, I'm sorry you had to see that." And she asks why those lunatics came to that house. He tells him he doesn't know. Um, and he doesn't know, and life isn't fair sometimes. Um, and that life isn't fair sometimes. Um, he tells her he had to kill them to protect her and Ruby. Then he just randomly says an eye for an eye. He tells her to take care of her brother, and Gunnar, basically the dad, dies. We cut back to Sally, who just stares off into space. So now we go again to that B-roll footage of the construction. The same basically the same B-roll doing the same shit. Inside Benton's office is Steve and Cynthia for their meeting. Um, Benton tells Steve, "Yeah, look, I'm not interested in money. I'm interested in the future." Benton tells Steve that he wants to turn this piece of shit town into the community that it should be. Steve says, maybe, and Steve says, "Well, that sounds great. Maybe I should keep my land and live here." Benton just looks at me and goes, "Well, why would you even want the land to just watch the weeds grow?" Benton tells Steve that he owns 200 acres that divides Porterville right down the middle. And Benton says he can pull the town together. He can pull that town together, and he just needs that land. He's written down a nice sum, and if he tries it on, it'll be a very nice fit. Steve opens the envelope and says, "That's a very big number." Steve thanks him for the offer and says that he will have his answer in 24 hours. Cynthia is shocked that he's leaving. Benton gets angry and says he's just waiting for him to he says Steve's waiting for him to raise his offer. He tells Cynthia to do whatever it takes to get him to sign that document. And he means anything. So we cut back to the library where Steve approaches Sally looking for the old articles that the articles he was just looking, or I guess he was looking at the articles he was just looking at, and some things are missing. She says that's impossible, and he says it looks like someone took some scissors to their files. Sally offers to help him with whatever research he needs to do, and he asks if she knows anything about the house where the family was murdered. She tells him she doesn't think she doesn't think the story's true, and she's never really seen any proof, even though she's lived there her whole life. She offers to point him in the right direction. So we cut to a trailer and a woman screaming, being chased by Sally with a chainsaw, wearing basically a Leatherface costume. The woman turns out to be Rudy, and they're acting out their favorite movie scenes. Sally tells Ruby she didn't act that the girl in the movie didn't act like that, and Ruby says he wasn't doing that. The girl from Texas Chainsaw, he's doing Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween. Sally asks why he always has to mix the movies up, and Ruby says he likes to play the characters how he likes to. Then Ruby says he's about to take a shower and asks if she wants to be Norman. Sally says, "Nah, how would you like to play Twister?" And Ruby says they don't have any left hands or feet. Sally says they could just cut the thumbs off the right ones and play like that. So Ruby goes to get the stuff. Sally's inner monologue says that wouldn't have mind playing Norman bass with Ruby, but since he's gotten older, it's kind of gotten a little weird. Which, yeah, you don't want to see your brother's Willie. We cut back to the library, and Steve is basically it's almost like it's the next day. Steve is still reading, which is weird that the days and times on this movie are not they don't match up because it was dark when they were playing those games. Um, and now it's apparently the next day, which librarian Sally tells him it's 5 and it's almost time for her to lock up. So again, we've already skipped yesterday, or we've already apparently went past the 24-hour mark of him telling Benton whether he was going to sell or not. He says time flies when you're having fun, and tells Sally that she's been a great help and offers to buy her some ice cream as a way of saying thank you. So we cut over to the girls at the ice cream shop, and they talk about, hey, look, see that guy? That's Steve Kellerman. He's a millionaire. Why is he with Sally? Sally orders a small chocolate shake, and Steve wants a chocolate banana malt. The girl behind the counter spells malt M-O-L-T. Sally points out that the girl misspelled malt, and the girl says, I know how to spell malt. Then the ice cream girl starts flirting with Kellerman before they walk away. She takes a napkin out, writes her number on it, and she gives him the phone number, and he tells her that he's already got plans. She hands him their shakes, and she tells Steve to give her a call when it's not pity fuck night. Sally gets that look in her eye as her and Steve walk away. We cut to 2 deputies putting up missing posters for Derek. These are Zeke and Earl, and they are hilarious. They tell her not to worry about finding Derek because he's got priors and he's probably shacked up somewhere with some big titty pole dancer somewhere up north. They say they are shocked that he hasn't knocked his sister up yet. They're clearly not very good deputies. They're very inept. She says Zeke and Earl are so bad at their job that it makes her job easy. That makes her job easier. Steve and Sally, they go for a long walk, and out of the blue, Sally just goes, "Hey, do you think Batman was gay?" Taking it back, Steve reminds Sally, he's like, "Hey, well, Bruce Wayne was a millionaire playboy. I don't think he was gay." Steve reminds Sally, or Sally says, "Well, I'm not talking about the one in the comics. I'm talking about the guy on TV, the one Adam West played." Steve said they had Julie Newmar on this show with him. How could he be gay? Sally goes, "Well, if you ever notice, he never really got with Catwoman, but he always went home with Robin every night." Steve says it was the 60s and we couldn't have Batman bedding down Catwoman on the show. She's got a point. They weren't going to allow that in the 60s. Sally says it's still gay. It's still 2 guys in tights sliding down poles all day. Then they have a discussion on the pros and cons of vigilantism. She asks him what time it is, and he says it's 7:30. Sally says, "Oh, I gotta run," and then she'll see him tomorrow. We cut to the trailer, and Ruby is stabbing the wall when Sally walks in, and he asks Sally where she was, and that she ruined his dinner, and he hates her poo-poo head. It's obvious that Ruby kind of didn't develop fully into an adult because again he's being raised by his also child sister. So she tells him to give her the knife, and he refuses to do so and sticks his tongue out at her. She says, "Give me the knife, or I will rip your tongue out and feed it to the dog." Ruby goes, "Well, we don't have a dog because we ate it." She looks at Ruby and she goes, "I'll get another one and we'll see what happens." Ruby covers his mouth and begs her not to tear his tongue out. She offers to tell him about her night, and she tells him about Steve and that he bought her ice cream and all they did was talk. Sally sits down on the couch next to Ruby, and then they turn the TV on. We then cut away and we come back, and Ruby is in a blonde wig with ponytail, staring into the camera, almost as if they're looking into a person. Sally's behind him, and Ruby says he's stirring. We cut to a guy briefly who's in a chair tied up, and for some reason he has a luchador mask on. Sally says she hopes they aren't keeping him from anything, and that they've got plans in 2 hours because Count Gore is coming on, and he's showing Toolbox Murders, which is one of their favorite movies. They tell them that in honor of the movie tonight, they will be playing a new game. It's called Toolbox Murders, the home game. Ruby has a drill in his hands as Sally is holding a circular saw. The guy starts screaming and Sally tells him to shut up. Sally says he's got the easy part. All he's got to do is sit on his fat ass and die like he always, sit on his fat ass like he always does. They hold him down, and Sally takes the circular saw to the man's foot and cuts it off. Sally says, now that that didn't take very long, did it? Ruby says, uh, Ruby says, another hour and 53 minutes to go. So they're obviously going to keep cutting this guy up. We go back to Gordon's hardware, and Sally decides she wants to go take advantage of the gardening sale that Gordon told her about earlier. Sally walks around looking at yard tools when she gets another flashback. This time it's Sally and Ruby when they were kids. It shows Sally burying their parents. We get more inner dialogue as Sally tells us they packed up what they could and moved to a trailer somewhere that someone had started converting into a house. Nobody nobody knew they were back there, and it was on the middle of their property. Sally ends up buying a chainsaw. We cut back to the trailer, and Ruby is pouring acid on what was left of the luchador body. And Sally says, "Hey, I'm going out soon." Ruby says he's almost done and asks if he could go out too. Sally says, "No, I got something I have to do." Ruby asks, "Is it Steve?" Sally says, "I'm not going to do Steve. Well, not tonight, anyways." She says she will be bringing someone home, so make sure it's presentable downstairs. We cut to the ice cream stand and the girl who gave Steve her number walking to her car alone. I literally, before I knew they called her Ice Cream Girl, I just wrote down Ice Cream Girl. I did not know that was her legitimate name in the movie. Like that's just weird. So Ice Cream Girl gets in her car and she drives off, and then another vehicle starts following the Ice Cream Girl, and it's obviously Sally. We cut back to Steve in his hotel room, and there's a knock on the door. He opens the door. Cynthia's there in a sexy red dress and says she's on her way to dinner and that she hates eat alone. Cut back to Ice Cream Girl pulling up to a club, sprays on some deodorant, and we get some new metal style music inside the club. Sally follows her in. In her monologue, Sally says she loves nightclub hunting because it's like a buffet. You can get the Mexican food, the Chinese food, the white food, it doesn't matter what kind of food you get. Um, and then in an Elmer Fudd voice, she goes, "Be very, very quiet. I'm hunting skinny ass bitches who need a spelling lesson." We see Ice Cream Girl. She's dancing in the corner with two guys. Sally just walks up, caresses her cheek, and the guys walk away. And apparently, without her glasses and frumpy outfit, Ice Cream Girl doesn't know this is Sally. They start dancing together, hugging each other, grabbing each other's asses. And then we see a montage of them dancing together. And Sally licks her neck, turning Ice Cream Girl on a little bit. We cut to Ruby playing with Barbie dolls in his room. And then Sally comes home with Ice Cream Girl. Sally has a knife in her hand while Ice Cream Girl looks around, and Ice Cream Girl the whole time is going, "Man, this is freaky. This is weird." Ruby has an eye hole in his bedroom that he starts looking out of, and Sally then grabs a mallet, almost as if she's trying to decide on which weapon to use on Ice Cream Girl. Ice Cream Girl turns around and Sally hides the weapon. They slowly walk to each other and they start making out. They make out for a bit and start feeling each other up. Basically, it's your typical 2004. We're putting a lesbian scene in a movie just for the sake of having a lesbian scene. Now, let's also not forget that Jimmy O. Burrow is the director of this movie and April is his wife. And that right now, Jimmy O. Burrow is living most men's fantasies and directing his wife in a lesbian scene. So basically, the girls start making out. They start feeling each other up. Sally takes Ice Cream Girl by the hand and down the stairs into the basement, which I would assume is her bedroom. We cut to Cynthia and Steve getting back from dinner, and Cynthia basically just throws herself at Steve. They start making out, fall into the bed, and then we cut back to Sally's room. Ice Cream Girl asked if Sally was going to tie her up because basically there's an X with a bunch of handcuffs and stuff like that on it. It's one of those like BDSM racks. Ice Cream Girl says she's been so naughty and asks Sally if she needs spanking. Sally ends up taking the ice cream girl's clothes off and ties her to the X symbol, in just her bra and panties. We kind of go back and forth, kind of pants back and forth between the girls and Cynthia and Steve, doing their thing. Um, Sally plants a kiss on ice cream girl just above her panties, leaving a lip mark. And Sally has a screw in her hand and asks. She turns around and asks the ice cream girl, "How do you spell malt?" And the ice cream girl's like, "What? Why? Why do you want me to spell malt?" Sally asks if she likes being scratched, and the ice cream girl says, "Scratch me." Then we get the sounds of tearing flesh as Sally uses the screw to spell the word malt, M-A-L-T, in her abdomen. Ice cream girl screams, and we get quick flashes between Sally and Ice Cream Girl and Cynthia. Basically, Cynthia is riding Steve. Again, no nudity in this entire scene. Ice Cream Girl says she wants to go home, and Sally says, "Well, you can't go home on pity fuck night." Apparently, that is finally what makes it dawn on Ice Cream Girl that she was about to have sex with Sally. Ruby is watching a hole in the floor as Sally grabs. This is one of the greatest kills in the movie. She grabs a funnel and puts in a bottle of acid. She shoves the funnel into Ice Cream Girl's mouth and pours the acid down her throat. It is such a great effect, and her basically it pans down, and all these blood and guts start falling out of Ice Cream Girl and into a bowl underneath. It's so fucking good. But then as the red is falling at it, and immediately switches to a cup of coffee being poured. Great effect. I loved it. It was awesome. We're now back at the library as Sally drinks her coffee at her desk. Steve comes in, waves at he waves at the blind guy. Yeah. So Steve and Sally make small talk as she offers him a cup of coffee, and Sally asks if there's more research, if he's there to do more research. Steve said it's been a weird week, and he tells her that Benton offered him 3 times what the land is worth, and that he wants to know why Benton wants that specific plot of land so bad. She asks him, like, which land? What are you talking about? And he tells her the land of the house. Basically, her land, tells her that the land that their old house was on was being sold. Um, he says it's his land, and he thought he told her about it. She says no, he didn't, and she gets that look in her eye. She asks how she could have been so stupid. Steve says he's tempted to sell the land and get the hell out of Dodge. He asks since she lives there, he asks her if she wants to see the land renovated or developed since she lives there. And before Sally can answer, Cynthia walks into the library. Cynthia asks Steve to meet her at her office around noonish for lunch, and he agrees. Sally turns after Cynthia leaves and tells Steve that, hey, I had the main branch pull some information on the property. Sally tells George that she needs to make a private phone call and to keep an eye out on things. But ask the blind guy to keep an eye out. Got it. We cut to Cynthia's office where she gets some flowers with a note that says, "Meet me at the farmhouse at 7 p.m." So again, apparently we don't have the lunch between her and Cynthia and Steve. We don't have the meeting between Benton and Steve for Steve to decide whether he's going to sell the house or not, or sell the property or not. And we just immediately go to 7 o'clock at night. That is a massive plot hole. I mean, we just fell face first into one of the biggest plot holes ever known to man. We cut to the farmhouse where the sun is still shining through the windows at 7:30 at night, which I guess. Cynthia shows up looking for Steve. She walks around for a little bit and decides to head upstairs. Once Cynthia gets upstairs, she finds Sally waiting for her. Cynthia asks, what are you doing? He asks Sally what she's doing there, and Sally says she has some loose ends that need tying up. Sally asks Cynthia if she got the flowers she sent. Sally says, "Oh, you thought they were from Steve? Well, I guess I should have signed it Sally instead of S." Cynthia gets angry and tells Sally she has no right to lure her there and no right to look at a man like Steve. Cynthia threatens to call the police and says she doesn't. And Sally says, "Well, I don't think you're going to do that." Cynthia asks who's going to stop her. We then hear the chainsaw rev up, and Sally chases Cynthia down the stairs. Basically, Cynthia goes running when she hears the chainsaw. Sally makes chase, and of course, at the bottom of the stairs, Cynthia trips because bitches be tripping. Cynthia tries to crawl away, but Sally catches up to her, and she teases using it on her crotch, her breasts, and her head before slashing at her face with it. And Cynthia is dead. Sally leaves the house with the chainsaw still revving, and she's walking away, and then a random utility worker is at the house and is pointing, because he's like, "Hey, ma'am, do you know where this court goes? Here, it does looks like it goes into the woods. I hope there's not another house out there, because if there's not a house out there and you guys have been streaming cable like this, it's a federal felony, and I'm gonna have to call the police." And then all of a sudden, Sally turns around and just lops his head off. Just like murders the guy. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Because it's hilarious because he's sitting there going, if he shows up stealing cable, that's a federal offense. And she turns around and he goes, "Holy shit, what happened to you?" And then just Sally chops his head off. Then we cut back to Benton in his shitty office and his shitty friggin' sign on his office. Answering the phone thinking it's Cynthia, and the voice on the other end of the phone says it's Pat, Cynthia's assistant. And that Cynthia, we only see the lips of the caller, but she says Cynthia wanted her to call Benton and let him know that Steve is ready to cut a deal and to meet at the farmhouse at 7 o'clock. Again, I I assume this is the same night. Apparently, uh, it turns out the voice was Ruby, and they could also call Steve, tell him the same story to meet him at the house. Steve says he won't make it there at 7, but he'll be a bit late. Then Ruby calls 911 to report a murder. We cut to the farmhouse where the inept deputies are banging on the door. Basically, Zeke and Earl are banging on the door. They kick the door open only to find basically all of Sally's murder victims laying on bloody white sheets and that. Earl asks what kind of Ed Gein wannabe asshole is Kellerman. They open another door and they find Ice Cream Girl. Earl calls her. Says even I wrote down Earl even calls her Ice Cream Girl because again I love being the fact that I'm right that her name is Ice Cream Girl in the movie. He says Ice Cream Girl was the sweetest piece of ass in the whole damn town, and this guy had to go and lop it off and throw it into a bathtub. Zeke calls dispatch and tells them that they will need the state boys out there. Earl says this is the kind of guy who would put on his granny's bra and panties to whack off with some crunchy Jif into a Thanksgiving turkey. That's oddly specific there, Earl. We cut to the same opening shot of Sally waiting for her victims. She says she again makes it clear that she hates waiting. And then she goes, "Here I sit, brokenhearted, came to shit but only farted." She says she wishes they would show up soon because wrestling comes on at 9 o'clock, and she really doesn't want to miss any of it. And then finally, a car pulls up. Benton gets out of the car, and he walks in and starts walking around the house for a little bit. Then he hears a dripping sound and puts his hand. He sees this liquid. He puts his hand in it, and it's blood. He looks up, and there's Cynthia's body hanging by a rope. Benton freaks the fuck out as Ruby starts shooting nails from a nail gun through the floorboards from the bottom of the house. Next thing you know, Steve finally shows him, enters the house, and he sees what's happening, and he tackles Benton trying to save him. But Ruby's just going clip, 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 and just going down a straight line. And finally, the nails go into the back of Benton, and we see Chainsaw Sally in all of her glory, standing against the window with the moon behind her, and it looks awesome. Sally approaches Benton, and Steve asks what Benton did to deserve this. Sally says she has to kill him to protect her family. Steve finally realizes that Sally is the girl from the story. Hold on 1 second, guys. Sorry. Um, so the nails go into his bag. She basically, she looks awesome. Sally approaches Benton and Steve asks what Benton did to deserve this. Sally says she has to kill him to protect her family. Yeah, we already did all this. Sally tells Steve to call the cops. She hands him a phone and says, "Here, call the cops. Do it." Sally says if he doesn't call the cops, she's gonna cut off Benton's head. So Steve calls the cops, tells them what's going on, and he says they don't believe him. Well, fuck this. So Sally cuts Benton's head off. Steve tells Sally he's not afraid of her and he doesn't think she'll kill him. And Sally's like, "Oh, you're right. I'm not gonna kill you. I can't kill you, Steve." And she basically knocks him out. Steve wakes up to Zeke and Earl entering the house. They walk up and Steve is covered in blood with all the bodies around him. Earl tells Zeke to shoot him now. Zeke tells Steve to lay down. They basically arrest him and read him his Miranda rights. Steve tells them they have it wrong. We then cut to Zeke and Earl outside on the television, talking to the news crew, taking credit for catching the serial killer Steve Kellerman. Earl says he hopes Steve feels bad for what he did after playing butt bingo with Bubba down in the slammer. Again, great line. I love these lines from Earl. Meanwhile, Sally and Ruby, they're just watching. They're watching the news and they switch over to Count Gordeval. And then we get another shot of Steve. But in front of what looks like, I know it's supposed to be a padded wall, but he's sitting in front of like a bathroom wall in a straight jacket, laughing, smiling, going, hee. And then we go back to a shot of Sally in front of a window with a red light glowing through it. Roll credits. That is Chainsaw Sally. I hope everybody enjoyed listening to that because I like the movie. We'll do the review here in a minute, but I really did enjoy seeing. I've seen again. It's not the first time I've seen Chainsaw Sally, but and guys, if you have any comments, feel free to go to YouTube and make comments or make comments on any of the videos. I'd love to hear from you guys. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Give me some suggestions, what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. Give me some suggestions for what I could change about things and that. But give me 1 second. So now let's get into some Chainsaw Sally trivia. Chainsaw Sally was released in 2004, and like I said, it was mostly distributed via the convention circuit. You really couldn't buy it in stores and that, but yeah, you could buy it on the conventions, which is again where I bought it. Right now, though, the movie is streaming for free on Tubi, or you can pay to rent or buy it on Amazon if you don't want the commercials. I used to own it, but I lost that DVD unfortunately. Uh, Chainsaw Sally gets a 4.4 out of 10 on IMDb, which is really low for IMDb because usually they rank movies pretty high. Even bad movies are really high ranked. And it gets 53% on Rotten Tomatoes, while 70% of Google users like the movie. So the movie spawned 2 seasons of the Chainsaw Sally show. Um, those you can still find. I know you can find those on Tubi. I believe you can still find it on Amazon, but you could also find it on Troma. Troma Now. If you haven't got Troma Now, and you're a horror movie fan, or even just a fan of just grindhouse exploitation, any kind of like low budget movies, Troma Now is what to get, what to grab. Um, it's awesome. It's got, I mean, especially like Toxic Avenger. We're gonna do some Troma movies here shortly. Um, in the future. But right now, basically, you got 2 seasons. The first season was released in 2010, and it was followed by a second season in 2012. And the rumor is now that there is a third season being shot. But it's been in production since 2021. So 3 years later, I think it's safe to say we're not going to get a season three of Chainsaw Sally, unfortunately. But it also created a Chainsaw Sally animated series in 2015. The tagline for that animated series is a story of boobs, blood, and blades. I haven't seen where the animated series can be streamed. I would assume Amazon, but don't quote me on that. Uh, the movie, the TV series, animated series are all written and directed by Jimmy O. Burrell. Um, like I said earlier, let me bring up his IMDb page real quick. Um, Jimmy's got 7 directing and 7 writing credits to his name, including Chainsaw Sally, the Chainsaw Sally Show, um, the animated one. He's got the, not the actor, director. That's what I want. There we go. And he's also got a movie called The Good Sisters, which I have seen with and it stars April Monique Burrell as his wife, April Monique Burrell, along with Debbie Rochon. Somebody who's also very popular at the conventions. Nothing. He hasn't done much since 2015. April Monique Burrell plays Chainsaw Sally in all forms of the character in the animated, the TV series, everywhere. She's got a total of 18 total credits. She's almost in every one of Jimmy O's movies that he's written and directed. Almost like a more talented Sherry Moon. Her last movie that she was actually in was a movie called Central Authority. In 2021, she was in Camp Killer in 2016, The Bone Garden, Bloody Scum. There's a bunch of movies that she's in. Nothing really major though that you know you would need you would need to look up. One piece of trivia, the only piece of trivia on IMDb is that during filming, April was actually pregnant with her first child. They do have 2 children. I believe one is from Jimmy's previous marriage, but April was pregnant during filming. The movie itself was filmed in Perryville, Maryland. That's where they use for Porterville. It is a small Chesapeake Bay town just northeast of Baltimore on the Susquehanna River. I have not been to Perryville, but I have been to Maryland. Maryland is a beautiful state, especially that part of Maryland. And when I'll say when I met April, at least I don't remember meeting Jimmy, but I met April at the convention. I think she sold the copy of Chainsaw Sally to me. Um, she was really, really nice. So definitely do what you can to support them. And finally, the budget for the film was estimated to be about $40,000. I can see that with some of the bigger names like Gunnar Hansen and Herschel Gordon Lewis. The effects were really good. So yeah, I can see that being 40. I don't have what it made. But that is all the trivia I have for you guys tonight for Chainsaw Sally. So let's get to the final review. And guys, I want to hear your final reviews too. Tell me what you think of the movie if you watched it. Tell us what you think in the comments. Um, Anywhere or anything like that. Help me out here a little bit. Let me know what I'm doing. What you like. What kind of movies you guys want to see too. Definitely give me some suggestion for movies and that. Um, so let's go on with the review. I like this movie. I really, really did. Like I said, I watched it originally in like 2006. Um, this will be like the 3rd time I've watched it, and I still enjoy it. The effects are really good. I know you don't get to see too many of the kills like in most low budget movies. Um, but the kills are great. The creative. The character is great. It's fun to watch. Um, definitely, definitely a lot of fun to watch. The story itself, the acting is kind of bad, but the story itself is pretty interesting. The like I said, the effects are really good, especially the pouring the acid down the girl's down the girl's throat, and the guts and everything falling out of her. Um, it was great. So let's go ahead and give this. I'm gonna give it 3.5 bloody bowels. How about that? Definitely 3.5 out of 5. I suggest watching it at least once. But I did enjoy it, and I did in fact have fun watching the movie. April Monique Burrow's very attractive, looks great in the Chainsaw Sally outfit, at least in my opinion. But I do like a girl in some Daisy Duke, so that could be one of the reasons why. But guys, thank you for joining me again this week. We're going to see about doing it again next week. Keep an eye out on all of our social media on Bloody Binge Movie Podcast on Twitter, the Bloody Binge Movie Podcast Facebook group, and Bloody Binge Movie Podcast on YouTube to stream it if you want to rewatch the episode or share the episode if you don't mind. Share if you can subscribe, share, do what you can. Help us out here a little bit with the podcast. Get our name out there at least. I'm not asking for anything else. I'm not asking for money or anything like that at this point. It would be nice if people could hear me, people could listen to me. Which we do get a lot of. We do get a lot of people watching the podcast. But it would be, just it would be nice to get more people going. Again, more people interacting because I would love to hear what your opinions are. Um, I don't know about YouTube because you know how YouTube gets sometimes, but definitely keep in mind keeping in there. And I might start doing a couple of other shows on on the what do you call it, the stream. Maybe some stupid news shows. Maybe do a quick couple of stupid news episodes where with dumb criminals and things like that. Maybe do halfway through the week. Maybe go ahead and do some entertainment haunt news if I can find some. But again, just give me your opinions of what you think I should do and things like that, and what you'd like, or at least what you'd like to hear. I don't really don't want you guys give me like your. I don't want to steal ideas from people is the big thing. So just give me ideas, what you'd like to hear and what you'd like to see on the network. We might again, I might go ahead and start utilizing the YouTube for live videos and things like that around Dayton. We'll see what goes on. But for now, again, you can find us at Bloody Binge Movie Podcast on uh on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Bloody Binge Movie Podcast on YouTube and Bloody Binge Movie Podcast on the Bloody Binge Movie Podcast Facebook group. By all means, message us, talk to us, all that good stuff. Let us know what we're doing. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And enjoy watching some bloody movies. Have fun binge watching. Have a great week, guys.